Hey everybody, hope you're doing good. Yeah, my name's Tom. I work at Beat Freaks as a community developer. So we are really interested in giving young people a platform, and we do this through a lot of agency work, particularly. So we connect young people with brands, large organisations, governmental bodies who want to access young people, who want to use their voice, understand them better. But we also like to kind of balance that by giving young people the platform and opportunities as well to develop. It's a lot of jargon, but it's just a small kind of way of just saying, like, we just help young people to be the best that they can be.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashanti. I'm an educator and I'm an artist. I used to work in primary schools, not anymore, but I'm still teaching outside of that. I'm also a co-founder of Children of the Sun, and set that up with my mom. And what that is basically is we're an organisation that empowers children from disadvantaged areas. We provide educational support for them, support for their parents, and just give them an environment where they can thrive and grow and just be their best selves, really. And I'm also launching my own business as well. So budding entrepreneur, I could say, starting up my own art business, really. So that's more to empower people to tap into their creative side and use it to tackle the struggles of being in lockdown and COVID.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm Alicia Drummond and I have a company called Teen Tips, and we work with schools all over the country. We launched I'm a psychotherapist by training. So for the last 12 years, I've been working in schools, talking to parents, pupils, staff, anything about mental health and well-being. And since lockdown, we've gone online. So we launched a wellbeing hub for schools back in November. We've already got 53 schools, I think, on board, and any school that buys it can gift it to a maintained school that perhaps couldn't afford it otherwise. And it's got masses of training and resources for all three audiences in there. So that's me.
I'm Dee. I'm one of the mentees for the FAQ. I started my business, I believe almost a year ago now. I started it just at the joint of lockdown. And the business is about vegan box meals. So yeah.
And your name is iFreshGo, isn't it?
Yes, iFreshGo.
So my name's Tiana. I'm obviously like a London native, but I've just moved to the Midlands. I run an organisation called Black Girls Camping Trip, and we basically run tailored outdoor retreats for Black women and non-binary people in the UK. It's basically like an attempt to support Black women and non-binary people in the UK with their mental health, because I've used like the mental health services obviously like on the NHS, and they were not like that great at being tailored towards my needs as a Black woman. So my platform basically allows people to build their retreats on an e-commerce platform and then show up and basically be taken care of in an outdoor space.
So what kind of why we asked everybody to be here really is because it is mentorship month. Yeah, just air some of these things that are going on at the moment that perhaps we don't have the opportunity to kind of talk about. So I suppose the first topic, and it's probably the biggest one, and it's quite a generic thing, is, you know, what impact has COVID had on your lives? First, I mean, for me, it's a massive thing. I mean, I've just been talking about the fact that schools have closed. I've got 3 children at home. I've working from home. It's a completely different way. I'm used to kind of doing a bit in the office and a bit at home, but everything being around home, it's trying for me to work out the barriers of what work I do, but then also my home life. So it's been a big adjustment for me. I'm not sure what everybody else kind of thinks.
For me, like I already discussed about previously having mental health problems, and I was diagnosed with mental health problems back in 2018. And a lot of that was actually to do with isolation. So I was really isolated when I was living on my own back then. And since then, I was living with my parents like throughout most of lockdown. I've literally just moved like a week ago too. But throughout COVID, it has, for me, like it really set me back mentally, back to this place, feeling stuck, like literally being stuck though. So like, of course, before it's like in my head, I could have gone out, but I decided not to, or I was too anxious to do it. But at first, like I found it really hard because I was stuck in the house and I felt like I was being pushed back to that place. And it made it a lot harder because the work that I do, it's a lot of responsibility when you have to when you're when you're in charge of other people's mental health and their mental health support, and they can't access support without you when you're the door to that. So for me, like, it's it's really tested my limits. So that.
I hear you on that, Tiana. Definitely, like, I know a lot of people that have been in that situation as well. Mine's a little bit different. On a lighter note, it cancelled loads of my holidays. I had holidays booked, ready, booked to go, and then it just gone. But that's probably like the least of the impact. I think for me, definitely, like, I was living with some in-laws at the time, just kind of waiting to save up for, like, okay, I'm ready to get this first house and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh man, what is this going to do? I think for me, more, I noticed one or two things. I think one was just able to reassess everything and reevaluate. I think that has been the biggest impacts. And I don't think I would have had the time to stop and slow down. Like, a few people that know me, like Lindsay, know me quite a bit. Like, I'm always busy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always busy. I'm one of those people that don't have to take me too long to get myself my calendar booked up for the week. And I think it's partly because I give out a lot. I do a lot of volunteering, and I was able to stop and just evaluate a lot of things, and that impact was really good for me. Sometimes it wasn't great, you know. I still commit to certain things, and it wasn't great for my mental health. But I really got a chance to evaluate a lot of stuff, and I was newly married. I'm still a little bit newly married at the time, but this was a really great chance to kind of evaluate just personal kind of things and growth between, like, my wife and myself. Funny name, and her name's Alicia as well. But yeah, we got to just kind of look at those things, and it's been really great for me in a sense, like reassessing things like financial things. And weirdly enough, I don't know how I was able to purchase a house in that time as well. So the impact has been, I'd say it's been about reflection more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I can identify with both of what you've said. I mean, especially in terms of the mental health aspect of it. I mean, for me, I left my teaching job in February, and about 2 weeks after that, lockdown happened. So I wasn't able to get employment after that, and it really affected me mentally, because I felt like, okay, I'd just got to the point where, you know, I'd got my qualifications, I'd become a teacher, and I was ready to, you know, just to see the world, to go out there and just apply what I've learned elsewhere. And then I guess when lockdown happened, I guess it forced me to really look within. Because I always knew that I had, you know, a bit of anxiety, and, you know, that really affected me in the past. And I guess, you know, as I was training to be a teacher, there were a lot of those things at the back of my mind. But obviously, teaching and just getting through life, you're constantly on the go, and you don't really have the chance to really stop and, you know, think, how am I doing mentally? You don't really get the chance to think about those things. So I guess when lockdown happened, it really exposed me to me, really, in a funny way. And I really saw myself in a different way. And I mean, during that time as well, you know, I did end up moving house. A lot of the people that I lived with, they ended up moving elsewhere, back home, when the airlines closed. They ended up having to get their flights back home, and I ended up being in my accommodation just on my own. So I can completely identify with the whole isolation thing, because for me, living on my own was a massive fear of mine, and that was another thing that just made me really stop and think as well. So it was the fact that I was a bit anxious. I was on my own. I just left my job, and it was lockdown. I felt completely cut off, and it was about just. I think for me, I learned how to be resilient in that time, and I learned how to overcome a lot of my barriers when it came to certain things in my life, such as anxiety, and I learned different ways to tackle it. So, funnily enough, I got back into doing my artwork, which is in fact what, you know, helped me push my business forward later on in the year. So, although there were quite a lot of bad things that happened last year, I feel like it was the biggest year for me in terms of growth, mental growth, just spiritual, everything. I feel like a lot happened, a lot of positive things happened that year for me, definitely.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been a very strange year, because if you work as an adolescent psychotherapist, it's been pretty overwhelming in terms of the number of parents and young people looking for help, and so that side of it has been very, very demanding. And because most of my business before this was actually going into schools and doing live talks and working face to face with people, and suddenly you have to go, everything had to change. But having said that, if it hadn't been for 3 lockdowns, we wouldn't have 3 different sides of the hub. The pupil one launches next month sometime, and I would never have ever had time to create it, because it's been a lot of work. So there's been good and there's been bad, and I think probably personally, what have I learned? That I've had to kind of look after myself, and I've put in a couple of non-negotiables every day, like getting outside and walking and having hot baths and nice stuff that makes you feel good at the beginning and the end of the day, and then the rest of it kind of races along.
Yeah, no, definitely. Dee, what would you say it's affected kind of your motivation in regard to being on lockdown, or do you think it's increased your because I know you're not one to sit still either, are you? You like to keep going, you like to keep doing stuff, and you're really keen. Has it affected your motivation one way or the other?
I think it has. I think the main motivation I have is because like you're used to like getting up and going places without having to plan. But because of lockdown, for example, even opening a bank account for my business is such a hard struggle, because a lot of banks are backdated with a lot of work. Just the whole process of opening a business during lockdown as well has been extremely obviously stressful, because a lot of companies that you rely on to like get answers back are not answering you for the sole purpose that because they're closed. So I do feel it's affected me in my motivation a lot.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's kind of have you had to find different ways of working? Have people had to find different ways of working? I know I have, because I think the first lockdown, I didn't know when to stop. Everything blurred into one. I didn't have really any boundaries. I was still working late, working early, not really thinking about my personal space. And then that had an impact on me. So I had to be quite strict on, right, I'm going to work these hours, then I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to work these hours. And then when I turn my laptop off, I'm going to keep it off. Has anybody else kind of had to put anything in place or adapt the way that you've worked?
I think because of my living situation, I live in a 2-bedroom house with my daughter. I don't have a workstation. I'm used to like going to university or going to the library or going somewhere apart from my actual home to work. So I don't actually have a desk. So because of that, I tend to find myself working in bed or working on the couch, and I'll fall asleep and wake up and realise I haven't done much work I wanted to get accomplished on that particular day. So I feel more so that work kind of stations or like work area has been a hard place for me to adapt to.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I completely echo what you've just said, because having children and when they're at home with you, and my husband working at home, he's got the playroom and he's got a desk and everything set up, but I find that I kind of move around the house to wherever I can get, and it doesn't just affect your mental health, I think it affects you physically, because I noticed before, first time round especially, that I wasn't sitting properly, and it can make you feel rubbish as well, can't it? Because you're sat slouching, or you're sat on over your laptop on your bed or whatever. So it can affect you in other ways other than just your mental health as well. Has anybody else had those kind of issues where they've had to adapt how they work?
Yeah, a bit similar for me, in a sense. Not in terms of that, about having kids. When I was at my in-laws for a lot of last year, it was trying to find a space, and you're like, kids just got to be kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I've tucked away in like the back room, wasn't getting much light in, and it just felt a little bit lonely at times. And you forget about those nuances that regardless if you're working or hanging out with somebody, there's really small nuances of just like saying hi to somebody, and a 2-minute catch up is massive compared to like, I think at the start, I'm sure everybody's having more meetings just to have a 5-minute conversation. So I think that was just adapting to that. But then when I moved into a new space, I definitely agree with that, having space is really important. And then I came across a new problem. I was just like, I've got the space. I'm just not as motivated at certain times. Why is that? And I think one of the things that I had to do was something more outside of work, which was make sure that I have time for myself and really have some dedicated, so that when I do come to work, I'm not feeling like I need to have my time because I need to, you know what I mean? So I think that was something that I'm still working on, to be honest, just trying to make sure that I've got some headspace for myself, because that's helping me in this time, I think.
No, I completely agree with that. Has anybody got anything else on that?
Yeah, I agree, because I mean, working from home, you sort of are within, you know, your four walls, I suppose, and with the, you know, where I was living at the time last year, it was, you know, it was a shared house. It was an 8-bedroom house, but then obviously being there on my own, it got to a point where I thought, well, I don't need to stay in one area of the house. I can be in this room one day, I can be in this room another day, and I think that made things a lot easier for me, because I didn't realize how much of a social person I was. I like being out and about. I love meeting people. And the thing is, I used to consider myself as quite a shy, quiet person, but it's not until lockdown when I realized I really thrive off being around people, and, you know, and just the day-to-day movings around of life. So one thing definitely is just the moving around and getting different, just seeing different things. And, you know, when you are going to work, you are seeing different things every day, whereas at home, you know what you're going to see. There's nothing unexpected. You know that your kitchen's over there, you know that this is over there. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, you know, when you're out and about, there's different variables, everything, you know, new things happen each day, and you don't really get that much at home. So it's about creating those almost. Do you know what I mean?
And there's a lot to be said about human connection as well, isn't there? Seeing people in the flesh, because I know when I was allowed to go back into the office for a bit, I was like, this you don't realize how much you miss having people around you until you're doing everything by computer. But that kind of face-to-face contact with people is something that we've always taken for granted, or at least I did, until it wasn't there anymore. Tiana, did you have something to say?
I mean, I've obviously, I just bought my flat and I'm now living alone, and I've gone from living with 9 people to living on my own. I have bare siblings, guys. So in terms of having to adapt, I don't really have to adapt that much. London's a packed city, so I'm always around lots of other people on my commute or when I'm at work, because I used to work in King's Cross.
Yeah.
And then at home is packed as well. So I'd say the only thing that was really different for me before was trying not to kill my siblings. They're getting on my last nerve. And we have to share so much space together. Lindsay, you would have seen me in my room before, with the roof slanted over my head because I'm in the attic. And so it's actually really weird to have all this space where I have the option to sit in the living room and have a meeting or talk to people. But if anything, it's given me perspective about having to stay at home, is about all the people that couldn't attend my events because they are disabled, or they're too depressed or too anxious to go outside. And so for me, the real reflection started about, hey, how do we level up this event so that it's accessible to those people who actually experience this on a day-to-day basis? Because for me, if it's hard for me to just be in the house where I know I'm allowed to go out for a walk, what if I couldn't go out for a walk?
Yeah.
Or if I couldn't do that?
Yeah. And how has it affected your business? I mean, I know how it's affected your business, because obviously you are running events, and so you have to rely on what's going to happen in the summer for when you can do that. And I know that you've recently released your tickets to kind of do that event. How has it impacted on it this time compared to when you've previously launched?
Do you know, a lot of people think that it would have gone worse, but it's actually gone better. We sold out within a week.
That's amazing.
I think that because of the effect that lockdowns have had on our mental health, and I don't just think actual lockdowns, it's the moving in and out between them as well, tier 3, tier 4, and then national lockdowns. I think that people are just really looking forward to an event where they can go out and meet people. And like you said before, you took that face-to-face experience for granted. And so for an activity like camping, that's been really hard to get my community out there to go and do. They're just willing to embrace anything at this point to enjoy themselves. And also being at home, people save a lot more money. And so I think there's that as well, that people are like just willing to just spend the money on experience. It doesn't have to be abroad. It could be right here.
And something to look forward to. I think that's the biggest thing that we've not had, is everything we've booked has got cancelled, as Tom was saying. So to be thinking that the end is potentially in sight with the vaccine rolling out and everything, it's nice to kind of go, well, I can pin on going away and doing something fun.
Yeah. So it's actually going very, very well. We just have to keep being dynamic in our response to whatever the government's doing. So we have to be as dynamic and communicate as well as possible with our customers, and that's it.
That's brilliant. Great. I mean, in regard to COVID, do you think that it's had an impact on your aspirations for moving forward?
Yeah, no, I mean, what I'm noticing with young people, it's not so much having an impact on their aspirations. It seems to be what I'm hearing from clients and parents and stuff. It's more about having an impact on their confidence, that they're actually going to be able to achieve their aspirations because of the lack of opportunities that, you know, they perceive. And there are definitely lack of opportunities at the moment. And I suppose it's keeping people hopeful as well, that, you know, things will open up and just to keep going, because, you know, it's good to have aspirations, and it's good, just one little step towards them each, as often as you can, will get you there in the end. So I think it's more about confidence than, you know, not, it's good to aspire, but maybe some people are lacking the confidence at the moment.
Yeah, completely agree. Ashanti, did you have something?
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I don't think it's necessarily aspirations that have had a massive hit. I think it's more the optimism that's been hit. I think people are losing their confidence, and they are worried about what the future holds, I suppose. And in that sense, they may be thinking that their aspirations are a bit too high for the current climate, and wondering how to do it step by step, I suppose. So I completely agree. Definitely.
Go ahead, Dee.
Thank you. I was just going to add, like, I feel that with aspirations, is one thing that kind of put me off is it's just like hearing about the business and stuff, and hearing all the business having to close because of COVID and how it's affected their business. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'm starting the business up and it's during COVID and all these businesses are closed down around me. What's going to happen to my business? So it's more so it's put a deterrent on my motivation and a little bit of aspiration because of everything what's going on around me.
I think one interesting thing, just to follow on what you're saying, Dee, and I'm thinking about yourself and Tiana and even Ashanti, is that you can turn around now and say, if I can do this here, I can do anything kind of feeling. So I think there's definitely a call for, and it's hard. It's not easy. Sometimes you might have to do it with a group, or you need someone else to see in you. But I've come out with some things, and I'm just like, okay, well, if I can do this, and I did this at the peak of COVID, when all of these things have happened, because I think that's what some people are also realizing, not just how resilient they are, but how much they can achieve with limited or dynamic resources, if you want to say that. So I don't know if that's how that's translating to every young person or different types of young people, young adults, but I'm sure there is some form of reflection where they can think about that, because like you said, you've started businesses in a pandemic. Like that should be like your strap line for like everything you do. Like I bought my first house, which I wasn't planning for the following year actually, which was crazy, but I managed to do it. Got moved in, did everything, spent 2 days just kind of settling in, and then the Wednesday, my wife Alicia, she got made redundant, and I was like, what? And but I had so much adrenaline because we're just like, what I've been able to do in the past 2 months, I was like, nah, we'll sort it, because I've been able to do, like, I had to just remind myself, I had to look at the house and go, well, I got this, we're going to figure it out kind of thing. So maybe I hope that's something that transpires to a lot of people as well.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Like I've just bought this place as well. When I moved in, so basically I'm having to adapt from moving from one city I've lived in my entire life to moving somewhere I've never lived before. I don't know anybody here in the middle of a pandemic as well. And that has like really been like showing me, okay, and I'm also just not working, starting this week as well. I'm not going to be working anymore. So I've got to find the money to pay for this too. Got here, the heating don't work. There's no water. So I had to figure that out. And I was just like, you know what? This is actually fine. It's actually fine. Yeah, I obviously have the resilience because I got here. I wasn't planning on buying until about 6 months ago as well. So that was actually my mom's choice because she runs everything in my life. So she
Most moms do.
Yeah, she was like, you're coming out here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know that as well. Like, and so running the business as well at the same time. And I feel like I'm mostly a creature of habit. So if I've done something one way, I want to create those routines and just execute it the same way I know how to every single time. And this has proven that I can obviously adapt outside of those habits and those routines, because everything that I've done this year, especially for the camping trip, I haven't done for the past 2 years with the camping trip. I've just like literally just new systems this year and everything. So yeah. So
can I just ask a question on that, Tiana, just for everybody? So what made you move from your kind of comfort zone in the city that you love, your mum and your siblings and everything else, and you had a job? What made you go, do you know what? I'm going to move to the Midlands and start afresh.
It is a couple of things. First of all, I cannot afford to live in London. Honestly, it is extortionate. Like, I just feel like unless you've like lived there for like more than 6 months, you don't know just how much it is gonna. You won't have anything tangible there if you remain there unless you're rich, and I am not. But second thing is about the serenity. I obviously like the outdoors because I camp and stuff like that. But there's a sense of peace I've been having since I've been here, and I've even said to one of my friends the past like 2 days. Normally in London, I wake up every day with an asthma attack. That's how I wake up, and I haven't had an asthma attack since being here. Because the air quality in London is so bad. Loads of people die there because of it. And yeah, I don't even know where my inhaler is. That's crazy. I don't even know where it is. So it was about that as well, like having a sense of peace. And then also, I know that I'm probably not planning on staying in the UK for much longer. So it's best that I'm able to separate this like unhealthy attachment I have to London just because it's my home, and I'm able to branch out. And if that starts with me moving somewhere else, somewhere new, then so be it. Then I can take the next step to move somewhere else.
Fab. Thank you. So what kind of would you say, if this is the floor, you have learned? I mean, I think we've touched on this quite a lot actually, but what would we say is learn either in a personal or professional way from this year? Well, I say this year, I mean kind of since COVID hit and we had our first lockdown. I mean, I know we've touched upon how we've all learned personally about ourselves. We've all done a lot of reflection, but is there anything professionally that you've learned?
Can I add that I've learned professionally, just like make sure my background's okay on Messenger, like Zoom calls and stuff. Because I have to do so much like video calls now, I've realised just to make sure that everything's okay before I actually press start like on video. So one thing I've learned is how to adapt to talk over Team Messenger and Zoom.
But I do think one of the things I think I've learned is people are more accepting. Like before we had lockdown, you were really on edge about your personal life crouching in your professional life. Like when you were having a video call, you were very professional about it. Whereas I think we are still very professional, but with other factors going on in your personal life, people are more kind of, accepting and adapt to that, which I've found. It's more the norm now for me to have my children walking in the background and nobody to kind of bat an eyelid, which has been really good for me. I mean, I'm not sure what everybody else kind of thinks in regard to that.
I agree with you, Lindsay, a lot in terms of just being human, just allowing people to be more human. I mean, I was saying to someone at work today, actually, they said they weren't feeling well, and they're not well. They're not sick enough to not work.
Yeah.
But they're not like you know what I mean, like they aren't, but they're not feeling their best. And I was like, it was probably because normally in a normal setting you'd probably just ask to work from home and who you are, you know what I mean, and you spend a lot of energy keeping appearances, you know what I mean, just like sometimes I get home from work, or I used to, and I'd be like, wow, why am I so tired? I'm just sitting at a desk. Like, it's because you're probably just sitting up a bit more, or like making sure you're okay. And actually, sometimes that can be the worst thing, a little bit, in a sense of just like too much, where you're having to let people know you're always okay. And actually, it's okay to be not in the best, not having the best day, or if you've got things at home that just have to take precedent. I think that I've learned that a lot, and it's okay if you don't have the best day at the moment. You're just going to keep going. And I agree with you. I think as well is that being adaptable is something that now is probably at the forefront of being professional. Now it's actually like, I think we're redefining what being professional means in that sense. So yeah, I definitely go with that.
And that flexibility, I think people are a lot more flexible, because I think because we've had to work from home, yes, you have to do your job, but people understand that you've got other commitments, whether that is children or caring commitments or other activities that you're doing. Workplaces seem to be more flexible around how they support you with that as well.
I've had like the opposite experience, to be honest.
Okay. No, go.
That's actually the reason why I decided not to stop working. So when I said that I'm not working anymore, I didn't lose my job. I chose not to have it anymore because I didn't feel like it was the best place for me, like in terms of that cultural understanding. So like I said, I have a lot of siblings, and I know that for my employers, I think that they feel like my siblings are not my responsibility, they're my parents' responsibility. But in my home, that's not how it works. I wish. But I've been in meetings where like my sister comes in and she's like, Tiana, I've worked myself and I have to go to the bathroom, I've got to change, I've got to shower her. And I know that they don't understand that. And I know that as well, a lot of my managers in my last job had like nannies and au pairs. And obviously I don't have that. I am the nanny, I am the au pair. So yeah, I didn't think that I didn't feel like they understood that this second mum thing. And even now, like, I'm obviously living alone now, but my mum's texted me literally as I'm in this call, so can you come back? I need you to help me with something. So I know that they don't get that, and I have to I don't have a choice. I have to get up and I've got to go because they're my siblings and they're my second children and my responsibility as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I can completely understand where you're coming from, especially when you've got working parents and stuff as well. Like, I didn't have as many siblings as you, but I had a little brother that I was responsible for growing up because my mum and dad worked full time. And I suppose when I think about it in regard to my three, I rely on my eldest quite a lot to help me with different things because she's 5 years older than the little one. So you kind of, but yeah, I suppose I hadn't thought about it in the way that you were just saying.
I think for my field as well, because I used to work in tech, and in the tech space, there's like massive class disparity. I'm like loads of like very wealthy people who have these meh ideas, but they've got a lot of money behind it. So they launch these massive companies and they run these companies, and yeah, they just don't understand where you're coming from at all.
Wow. Anybody got anything else to add to that?
I'd say in terms of professional growth, I think one thing that I learned last year and this year is using social media to network. And I know that sounds ridiculous because social media's been there for a long time, but I think because the physical socializing element has been taken away, I've had to really utilize my social media platforms to reach out to people, especially with my artsy party events, because I've not been able to put those events on, and because I know what sort of platform I've put myself on by setting up those events. There were people that attended that suffered with mental health. There were people that attended that expressed that they were so glad to get out the house and just paint. So it's about keeping those links with people, constantly checking in with people, just making sure you're keeping those links with your customers. And that's one thing that obviously, because I've not been able to have regular events, that's something I've had to really utilize, just using my social media platform to extend my network and to extend my communication, really.
And would that be your advice to kind of young people setting up businesses? Would that be kind of how you would encourage them to go with the pandemic? obviously you've said social media has been a really important platform, and I think it's definitely become a bigger platform. I mean, it's always been there, it's always been huge, but it seems to have got even bigger. So, you know, if there was, and this goes to Dee and Tiana as well, like young people that wanting to set their business, is that how you've kind of gone about and used a social media platform, or what would your advice be to them?
I think it's about evaluating the way that you use it. Because I mean, for me, social media was just, oh, I've got myself a page now. Let me follow this person and this person. Whereas actually, I have to sit down and think, okay, who do I need to follow? Who can I, you know, what tags can I use? And these are all things that I didn't really think were important when I first joined social media. I just thought, oh, well, you know, I can take it or leave it. But I started to see the importance of who I was communicating with, who I was networking with, you know, not just following a person and leaving it at that, following someone, researching them, finding out what they do, finding out, you know, where you can make other connections from that. And I find that I've spent a lot of time just utilizing social media to see who's around me, if that makes sense. Birmingham it's so diverse and rich in terms of the amount of people that there are that you can lean on for support. And I think before I use social media properly for my business, I don't, you know, I feel like a lot of people feel that Birmingham isn't that way. You know, I've had a lot of conversations where people feel that, you know, Birmingham isn't as up and coming as London. Birmingham's falling short in a lot of areas, where I think actually it's just a case where I think maybe in Birmingham you just got to seek them a little bit harder, if that makes sense. Once you find them, then, you know, once you open one door, you find out there are loads of people, loads of businesses, loads of organizations out there that are relating to your field. So that's definitely one thing that I've learned this year, definitely.
Fab. Okay. So, who or what obstacle in your past have you had to overcome in order for you to create the future you have made for yourself? That's a bit of a deep question there. And I know Tiana will like go through lots of different things, but does anybody want to kind of comment on that, an obstacle that you've achieved to get to where you are now?
Anxiety was a massive thing for me, and Tom will know as well. We must, you know, singing and all sorts. And I think, you know, when you just, you know, when you talk about anxiety, I feel like people don't necessarily realize how much it can weigh down on you unless you actually experience it, and it can almost become paralyzing to the point where, you know, you want to do certain things, you have these high aspirations, but then if anxiety gets in the way, then it's almost like you're hitting a brick wall every time. And it's annoying because it's not physical. You can't see anxiety. You can be going about your day-to-day life. You can be smiling at people, happy. You can appear to be sociable, but it's just there in the back of your mind. So I think, you know, last year and this year, that's been one thing I have definitely overcome in order to, you know, put myself out there and do the things that I'm doing.
And how have you what's your coping strategies? Because I mean, you know, we could all be suffering from anxiety and people just don't know, because we're very good at hiding how we feel and what we portray. So what would you say for you helps you to deal with it? Because you've said you're better equipped to deal with it this time round. What would be your advice in regard to that?
I think a lot of it comes down to understanding yourself. I think when you learn what your triggers are, and when you learn to see what your body cues, there's always body cues, there's always notice leading up to a point where you do have that moment where it's an anxiety attack or whatever. There's always a process leading up to it. And I suppose, you know, when you are going about your day-to-day life, you can get caught up in just life and you don't necessarily have time to identify those cues. But I think one thing that it really is important to do is just become more in touch with yourself. And, you know, if you do go into a certain situation and you realize, okay, I'm feeling really clammy, or I'm starting to shake, or there's these thoughts in the back of my head, it's like, okay, how do I sit down and get to the root of that? And I think it's just about understanding where the root of a lot of the anxiety comes from in order to overcome it. Because I think for me, I knew it was there, but I didn't sit back and think, why am I feeling this way? It was just, oh, this whole thing is happening. Oh my God. And it was just that sort of thing. And I guess for a lot of people, it can be that way as well. It's just like this massive battle in your head that you don't necessarily want to tackle. I think my advice to anyone would be tackle it. It's going to be hard, but tackling it is the best way to overcome it, get to the root of it. And if you can't do that on your own, there are loads of platforms out there that can help you get to the root of it. And once you do, then it'll be so much easier to just go through it and get to the other side.
Yeah, I mean, has anybody got any other thoughts on that, or kind of what they've overcome to get to where they are? I think that was really powerful, Ashanti, because I know, a lot of us suffer with anxiety. We don't necessarily know that it's anxiety, and it takes you a long time to work out that that's what it is sometimes as well, doesn't it? Because
5 years to understand.
Yeah, I mean, we have all
Yeah.
these feelings, and it's trying to make sense of exactly what they are, and until we get to that point. So that's a massive thing to get to that, and then to kind of learn how to cope with that and know when it's come in and know how to process it again is another massive thing to kind of get through.
I think for me personally, and it's a progressive thing actually, that's changing even now. But I think it's just being more inquisitive and questioning myself in a good way. Sometimes it's so easy to go through the motions of stuff and not ask why are you doing things, or what is the purpose, what's the goal, and really just being driven about yourself. I can be quite selfless for other people a lot of time, and it's just I've just done it. I've done it for so long, or I can spend a lot of time, like I said, I can mentioned earlier, volunteering somewhere or doing something actually to my own detriment at times. So it's just really what's helped me a lot is really being focused on what, and it's nothing to do with this kind of self-made or I've done it all me kind of thing, which is great for certain people, but for myself it's more about how can I, if I want to be the best that I can be, or sometimes you always talk about things that you never got to do, and just saying like, well, why is that? Like, why is it the case? What are you doing now? And I've been able to just trim down a lot of things and streamline, and part of that is also having conversations with other people as well, seeing how they think about you, people that you trust, saying that, okay, well, let me talk through some of the things that I actually do. What do you think about this? Or what do I do? I remember I spent more time out than I was at home, and it wasn't like it, but literally just doing positive things, or like and I never hung out with any friends at a certain point. I was doing so much, and I thought I was like, I'm not having any friendships here, like valuable stuff outside of a commitment. Why is this? Or I'm not spending time with particular people, or I'm not getting fulfilled for myself. Why is this? What needs to change? Why don't I feel like I'm broke at like halfway through the month kind of thing? And just reevaluate. And I think that has helped me clear my mind a lot more, and it's helped me to say yes to things and no to a lot of things as well, and in a sense that's always going to benefit for the most part. So for me, that's been a big thing, like really taking stock, evaluating myself, and then now it's trying to do it regularly and just feel like don't just go through the motions of what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Dee, how about you? Because I mean, you had a daughter quite young, didn't you? So you've had to achieve quite a lot to get to where you are and see your future.
Yeah, so there's a word that I've learned like a few months ago, and it's called imposter syndrome. Yeah, and I feel like it relates to me a lot because as you know, I went through care at a very young age. I had my daughter at 15. And I remember sitting in college, and I told my college mentor at the time, because I had dyslexia, that I wanted to go to university.
Yeah.
And her response is, I want to study law. And her response was, don't study law, you're going to fail. And you're not smart enough to. So not listening to her, I actually applied for law at university, got through, but I failed my first year. And I remember crying and thinking like I'm not good enough and everyone's smarter than me, and putting myself down a lot. But after I had that like moment to myself, I kind of reevaluated what I was doing wrong, went to my tutor, and just worked twice as hard to get where I am today. So I've just recently passed university with a 2-1, which I still think personally that I don't deserve, but it took me a lot of hard work to get to that position. And again, relating to my business, I keep on telling myself I'm not good enough, or listening to everyone's amazing ideas and thinking, oh, maybe mine's not that great. So I have this bit of self-doubt that I need to overcome, and I think that's one of my main doubts in myself, is I need to just make sure I'm not self-sabotaging myself in the future and any future stuff.
Yeah,
Can I
yeah.
answer that?
Go on, Tiana.
Just because, like, what I was saying before about like working in tech, I worked for a lot of people who had like these like meh, boring, bland ideas, but they had so much self-confidence, it made them so much money. And I just feel like, honestly, like, it's sometimes it's not even about the idea, it's about the work that you're willing to put in and the passion that you have for the thing that you're doing, and the amount of time and effort that you're willing to dedicate to it. And obviously, you're a very dedicated person. You said that you had your daughter when you was 15, and at school they're telling you that you can't go to law, you're going to flop, and then you still went through. Then on top of that, you got 2-1. So clearly, like, you obviously have the drive, the intelligence, to pull off your business. So I don't feel like you need to feel like that way. And if there's any way that I can affirm you today, then that's one of the things that I will definitely say to you. Like, I promise you can do it.
Thank you, I appreciate that so much.
Oh, that's really kind. I think imposter syndrome, I learned all about imposter syndrome, and I think it's something that at some point we probably all suffer with a little bit. It's that self-doubt in the back of your mind, that little voice that says, are you good enough to do that? And I think it comes back a little bit to what Alicia was saying earlier. When we think about young people and the pandemic and stuff, it's that confidence thing, isn't it? And I think, well, I can only speak for me, but I know that the pandemic has knocked my confidence a little bit as well, because it's completely different to everything we've ever done. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm really interested listening to what you're saying, Dee, because I know that in the past I've suffered with that imposter syndrome and that lack of confidence as well. And, and what Shandy said, I've had to have a bit of a conversation with myself at times as well. And so I think we're kind of all there, and it's probably compounded with the pandemic as well, because we can't go out and talk to our friends about it face to face, which is what we normally would do, or our parents or our carers, and kind of that has an impact. I know it does personally for me. I would go and talk to my mum about things or my friends, and kind of once I've talked about it, I'd feel a million times better. But when you can't do that, that also has an effect on you. Fab. Okay, so
can I just jump in there?
Yes.
Yeah, because we've been creating a little podcast series called Inspiring Futures, and we've been interviewing people, and I'm listening to you four, and I just, you got so much, you're so inspirational, and Dee, that story is really moving. I think it's extraordinary what you've all achieved, and I think, we started creating them. So I've just been interviewing people, like, tell us about your industry, tell us about your job, what do you do day to day, what are the highs, what are the lows, how did you get where you are, and what advice would you give to a young person? And I think that messaging about, whenever you see somebody really successful, don't think that they didn't have some bumps along the way, because every single one of them would have done. And it's that ability to kind of pick yourself up and dust yourself down and believe that you'll get there that's just so important. So it's great stories. If any of you want to share them, delighted to do one with you.
Amazing, thank you. So I've got a few more questions before we kind of wrap up, but one being, if I was to say to you, a fearless future, what would that mean to you today? So what does a fearless future mean for you as individuals?
Can I start? I think for me, there's a lot of subcontext to that. A lot of different strands, I would say. From experiences that I've had, I know a lot of things that have caused me to be fearful. One of those things being anxiety, but another thing was, being a Black woman in the UK. That's something that, I found to make me fearful, especially while I was teaching. Little things that you don't necessarily, growing up, think that will happen to you. So, I've experienced racism. There's been times when, I've had to really sit down and contemplate certain hairstyles, and I've called my mom and said, look, I'm going to wear my hair like this to work. I'm putting myself at risk by wearing my hair like this, sort of thing. And, I think for me, as I'm 26 now, 5 years ago, I didn't necessarily think that I would end up having to have those discussions. You hear about those things happening in America or, you know, outside of yourself, and you get a lot of people preparing you for those things. But then when it actually does happen, when you do find yourself on the receiving end of racism, I don't know, it can almost, it knocks you back a little bit. And I suppose for me, a fearless future would just be a future where those challenges aren't something that are at the forefront, where, you know, where I can go to work and wear a hairstyle that won't be deemed unprofessional, or, you know, I can talk about certain things without worrying that I'm going to be looked at a certain way or perceived a certain way. Do you know what I mean? So that's what a fearless future looks like for me. And also, you know, with it being COVID as well, there's that strand. Fearless future for me would be being able to go outside and not fear the consequences, being able to socialize once again, being able to travel. And, you know, I think for a lot of us, you know, our lives aren't as confined as we think we are. With it being locked down, I realised just how many connections that I've made outside of Birmingham, outside of England, outside of the UK. And I guess with the restrictions in place, it's when we realise that, you know, at 26, I've met so many people, and I guess it just makes you realise how many people you can't be in physical contact with. So I guess a fearless future is also just being able to go out there and just be your best self without restrictions as well.
Thank you, Shanti. That's great. Anybody else? What does a fearless future mean to you?
Can I add on to, sorry for pronouncing your name wrong, Alicia's statement in regards to like having bumps in the road? I believe like a fearless future is not being afraid to take risks and being prepared to fail. Because a lot of, with myself again, it's the kind of fear of like thinking I'm going to fail at something, where in fact failing is what actually makes you the person you are today. So my answer to that was essentially just not be afraid to fail and ask for help. One thing I'm really stubborn with is asking for help when I need it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
For me, I think it's like, I think that I'm not scared of failing. You know, they say that your deepest fear is not that you're inadequate, it's that you're brilliant. And I think for me, like a fearless future would just be to embrace what that looks like. And sometimes the speed that it moves at, because if anything, it's actually speed that, like, something's moving too quickly, it's growing too quickly, that sort of thing. And it would just not being afraid of that and just letting it happen and just enjoying the journey.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, everyone said all the buzz marks on it, the top answers on Family Fortunes. No, no, I definitely agree with that. I felt, when hearing that, I felt exactly the same in terms of just not being afraid to start regardless of the situation. Like if you look at the context now and what's going on, there's always a what if kind of thing, or when will. And I think it's sometimes that can be a distraction or an excuse to start something. There's not a rule book now in terms of how certain things should go. So you should just start it anyway. It's not going to change. You can have this conversation with yourself for the next couple of weeks, and then when you do start it, you think, why didn't I do it before? What was I waiting on? And sometimes you put up you make more excuses before they happen, or you create scenarios in your head before they happen. And everybody that said something on here has done something really inspirational. I'm really admiring what everybody's done, from going to university and achieving more with having a young child, to starting like Black Girls Camping. I remember Lindsay, we were talking about this, and I said, I've never heard anything like this. This is sick.
Right.
It's one of the sickest things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Because Black Girls Camp.
Listen, you exactly. I know, I can attest to that. I know exactly how that feels. I need to get on this Black Girl Camping thing. You've got someone here.
Brilliant.
They all want to do it. It's amazing.
Yeah, but it just shows that these things are possible. And I definitely agree with what you said, Tiana, in terms of like, I'm very much on that end as well. When I'm scared of starting something, it's not because I'm gonna fail. I'm just scared of being good or like being myself and having that exposure and letting people see me for who I am at times. So I think that's something that's really interesting. I think that young people should take note of, like, just own it. Like, there's a phrase that you say, like, do it with your chest, and let's just do it with the chest, like, full on.
I think all of the above, and I think doing it in a way, doing the future in a way that benefits as many different people, but also kind of, we like to go for the B Corp status, because so getting companies who work ethically, who are mindful of the environment, who put young people's needs at the heart of everything that we're doing, and just not being afraid sometimes to stand up and be counted. I think for me that would be get over my fear of putting something out on social media, because social media is frightening, isn't it? You get it wrong, and you get it massively wrong, and the stuff that comes back at you can be really frightening. So I think I'm going to try and be a little bit braver about not holding back when somebody's being a complete idiot on making policy about young people, particularly, because we need to fight their corner, I think, at the moment.
No, absolutely agree. So, I mean, I think Tom and Alicia probably have already mentioned this, but what would be your piece of advice you would give someone who is struggling at the moment to see a fearless future? Because it is quite difficult at the moment. People are quite low with the situation, but what would your advice be?
Keep talking, because people want to help. People really want to help. So even if you don't feel like you're making any progress, if all you're making is connections and talking to people, and people love to give advice, so use this opportunity right now just to talk and connect and be inspired and look out there for what other people are doing, and just don't stop dreaming.
I like that one. Has anybody else got any advice for someone that can't see a fearless future right now?
Yeah, from this end, it would just be like to keep imagining, because your imagination is actually an extremely powerful thing, and it's obviously something that's discouraged once you're no longer a child. But without being able to imagine what something could be or what it should be, then you're not able to create said thing. You're not able to create. You block yourself off from that creativity. And so I would just urge people to remember the power of their imagination, whether that's, you're on the bus and you're looking out the window and you're making up a music video in your head, or you're creating a scenario before you go to bed. Like the sort of like there's like regular forms of imagination. Just keep going at them. Just keep using them. They're amazing tools.
Good piece of advice.
I mean, to add on what Tiana just said, I am a strong believer of manifestation, and as you just said, picturing something that's there, and it will be there. So, I'm a strong believer of manifestation, so I totally agree.
Putting it out into the universe, yeah.
I think I would say as well, if anyone's struggling, picturing a fearless future, I think that starts with you. Everything that whatever you're expecting or the uncertainty, the best thing is that you get to be a part of it and you get to shape that stuff. So look at yourselves, and that's in a positive way. You might not like where you're at the moment or what you're doing at the moment, but every single thing are key components to what you want to be. Like I'm just thinking about what Dee just said about just like her sitting in college or the situation she was in. All of those components, and maybe like your saddest day is a contributor, I'm sure you'd say, to where you're at the moment. So fearless future just starts with everything you've got right now, and you start from there.
Fantastic, thanks, Tom. Ashanti, anything to add?
Yeah, I'd say it's all about perception of self, I think, and circumstances. I think you can either put yourself in a hole or you can put yourself in a tunnel. At least you know that a tunnel has an exit, a hole doesn't. And I think the more people you reach out to, the more, you tap into who you are as a person, the more steps you'll find to get out of the tunnel that you're in. And you end up not being in a hole, you end up being outside of the tunnel on the other side. And yeah, I think that's the main thing. If your perception of yourself is a low negative one, you'll find that you're in that hole for a longer period of time. Whereas if you start to believe in yourself, you remain optimistic, you realize your potential, that's what launches you out and gets you to where you need to be.